And on our SuperTalk TV, C-Spar Channel 70, it's the one and only Ricky Mathews, brother in broadcast, host of the Ricky Mathews Show, the outdoor show, and a multitude of other things. Ricky, how are you, sir? It's good to have you.
I'm doing fantastic. How you doing, my friend?
Good. It's Thursday already. It's been a fast week. Tomorrow, Friday. And a chance of rain is at least, it's so nice to have it. Nobody's saying anything bad about rain. Have you noticed that? So
I hear you. I hear you completely. In fact, those of us who do a lot of hunting and we've been dealing with the drought, it's great to be able to get some rain on some food plots. That is for sure.
Yeah. It was an interesting story talking about this one. The little kid, 8 years old, who took that almost record buck. I don't know if you saw that story. The little girl.
No, I missed that one.
It's a great story. Things happen in the woods, like at one moment you think, oh, we got to pack it up. Nothing happens. Then out of nowhere, here comes that massive buck. And those are the things that keep you going, aren't they? I mean, you hear that little creak, a little snap of a twig or something, and like a ghost that appears out of nowhere.
Yeah, some of the funniest stories I've heard is as the sun's coming up, someone sees a deer over in the corner of a food plotter in the woods, and they're watching it, just waiting for shooting light. And then as the sun comes up, it's just a bush. But those are the kind of things that get people riled up and enjoying the outdoors. It's not about shooting. If you get an opportunity to do that, that's great. But it's just such a wonderful opportunity to spend time with family in the outdoors.
And I'm going to tell you something too, and people need to understand this, because I've often said we need. Whatever you think about meditation, and if you're atheist, you don't like the word meditation to be connected to faith and meditating or saying prayers or whatever, just whatever way you meditate, to detox every single day for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, walk in the park, climb up a deer stand with or without a gun, but don't take your phone. It's more important now than ever before. I think one of the things people miss, I didn't mean to go off on this tangent, I think one of the things people miss and don't understand about men and women who hunt and fish and partake in the great outdoors is no matter how long we've been doing this, from childhood to at this very moment, those pictures of almost every single moment are digitally imprinted in our brains. And we recall them up every single day. You ask me something about a point on any reservoir, and I can tell you just when we caught the fish, what I caught the fish on, or when you were in the woods. And is that they don't understand this. It's such a tremendous impact on the sportsmen of this state, men, women, boys, girls. It doesn't really matter. That's how powerful it is.
It's a living, the meditation part of it is so true for all the hunters and those people who just enjoy going in the outdoors as they're listening to this. They know they all have their individual experiences. Paul, I think Will Primos, the way he described it, he describes when he's out doing a turkey hunt as he doesn't necessarily have to like verbally pray, because he actually suggests that he's in a prayer in that moment. I love the way he says that. It's a divine experience.
I have been there in mornings whether it's hunting and fishing, and the sun comes up and you see that, and the pastels are just colored. It's almost like Bob Ross is in charge of this stuff. And I've often equated that with this is, and I understand this, I don't want to be sacrilegious. This, to me, is one of the greatest cathedrals that God could ever make. And you put in a position of just, it's spirituality there.
No, there's literally no doubt about it. And the fact that you're able to be there with friends and family and be able to introduce your kids and your grandkids to it, and you're doing it together and they're learning this great appreciation for it. I really believe a family that spends time in the outdoors together stays together. And it is a type of divine intervention that is taking place. I believe it deep in my soul that that's the case.
And we have so many people in the state that are not taking part in this, whether it's on the public lands or public parks and public fishing areas, whether reservoirs or lakes, and they need an investment in a boat or a camper, go get her done. It would be a tremendous investment. I hate to go from here back to politics, but I said I wanted to talk about school choice. When we start looking at the 2024 legislative session, 4 months on this one, and we start looking at this, one of the defining things that they will leave in sine die is going to be, what did they do on school choice? Corey DeAngelis was with us yesterday. He spoke last night, I understand, to a very good crowd about, he was with the Education Freedom Forum, and a lot of states are doing this, and it's time for the Republicans in the state of Mississippi to do the same thing. A guy who's hit this pretty hard was Vivek Ramaswamy, and I have one audio bite to play on this one.
Cardinal rule here. Parents determine the education of their children. And the real head of the snake here is the U.S. Department of Education at the federal level. They're taking $80 billion of your taxpayer money, our taxpayer money. And then what they're doing, this is behind the scenes. They will tell these public schools that you don't get that federal money unless you adopt these toxic racial and gender ideologies. That's really where it's coming from. It's not bottom up, it's top down. Well, the good news is the next U.S. president, if you all put me there, that Department of Education, like the rest of those three-letter agencies, reporting to me. I'm going to shut down the U.S. Department of Education and then give that $80 billion back to parents across this country to be able to choose, to be empowered, to decide where they send their kids to school. That kind of competition and choice, that's how you dilute this racial and gender poison to irrelevance. And it starts at the top, and that's my job as your next president.
Your thoughts?
Well, I actually wonder if we couldn't find sort of a bipartisan agreement about school choice, because I think most experts are going to tell us that the single biggest thing that we can do to improve Mississippi's economy is to improve education. And you think about the Mississippi Miracle, the literacy based promotion act that was passed 10 years ago, and the amazing progress that we've made there, ensuring that kids can read at a certain grade level before they get to fourth grade. You know, that kind of innovation is what we need. And in Mississippi, parents want to have a choice. I don't care where you are in the socioeconomic situation. They want a choice. And during the pandemic, a lot of parents understood that some school districts are doing really well. Many are not. And as you have probably heard the statistics, 6% of kids didn't even come back to public school after the pandemic. Some went to private schools, some went to a home base. We don't know where they all went. But the reality is, if we're going to improve the educational system in this state, we've got to put the power back in the hands of the parents who have the real ability to find the right fit for their kid. And by the way, if we don't do it in a way that creates vouchers or scholarships or savings, however we choose to do it, if we don't do it that way, we're actually going to create more of a socioeconomic divide in the state. Poor families have an opportunity to have a choice. Right now, if you think about it, affluent families and families with means have a choice now. And what we're going to do in Mississippi would be so innovative. I do believe it would ultimately be Mississippi Miracle 2.0.
Good point. Have you, as a publisher in the newspaper business or now, just on a personal basis also, had that power connect you and said, Ricky, can I talk to you off the record here and talk about the administration, how powerful the employment is of schools, the gavel that they have to lead people into the polling booth and everything else? It just seems like when you start talking to these folks, the last thing on their mind is the education of the child. It's the administration. Yeah. It's the billions of dollars that's in that kitty. It's the power base of the administration and everything else. I want to ask you about that when we come back with Ricky Mathews. All right, back to Ricky Mathews, and we were talking about a number of things, but when you look at school choice and see who it's going to affect. Ricky, we have the same conversation back on charter schools. Fought so long to get charter schools in there. And we never had the help of the Black Caucus and the state legislature or a lot of the black leaders or the black pastors, because it was all like, you guys are trying to trick us and the charter schools are going to be leading us back to the segregation. And people try to tell them, no, this is to help those rural schools, underperforming schools, etc. How do you do that? How do you make that same case?
I think that's why I started out by saying I think we should be able to make this a bipartisan effort, because when you begin to understand that all parents, no matter where you are on the socioeconomic ladder, all parents who understand the situation want to be able to create a choice for their kids. And, what's interesting is, like in Florida, for example, they just passed it, and over 800 private schools have emerged, in such a very short period of time. People will find their way to good situations if they're given a choice. I remember an editorial board meeting we had with Haley Barber back when I was publisher of the Sun Herald. He had just returned from some school district in a poor community, and they were doing so extraordinarily well. And what the point that he was making was he saw for himself how much leadership makes a difference. Okay, so in the public school system, you've got some districts that are being well led and some that aren't. If you're in a district that's not well led, you currently have no choice unless you're affluent and can send your kid to a private school. Otherwise, you're stuck. So what happens when you create school choices, private schools and other alternatives begin to emerge that really give all families an opportunity to seek the best possible education. That's why I believe that this outcome, what will happen here, will be the same kind of impact as improving literacy scores in Mississippi. It will be very, very significant. And I think the Black Caucus and church leaders and anyone should be able to get their head around this and see this is the solution for especially poor communities.
Well, here's the problem with it, and it's being a little naive to think it's going to be that easy on my part or anybody else's part, is simply because regardless of ethnicity in these small towns, whether it's rural town in Mississippi or in any other place in the state, black like white politicians both understand the power of the local hospital and the local schools as far as at the voting booth. They both understand this, and they use it brilliantly. So at the end of the day, it's not so much about there's no way I'm going to invite a private school to come in and make the environment better for that. So it's working against the kids. We're sitting here talking about this, and they know it. But listen, you mentioned private schools, and there was this article, I think Lance sent this to me. If you live in Mississippi, you have access to more K through 12 school choice options than you might realize. Navigating these options and finding the best fit for your child can make a world of difference for your family. Let me skim through this. Mississippi families can choose from traditional public schools, public charter schools, public magnet schools, private schools, online learning, homeschooling. But it said, did you know that Mississippi spends an average of $10,170 now? I mean, just a couple of 3 years ago, it was $8,500. It's over $10,000 per student. And if this were widgets, we'd look at the end of the day, at the end of the assembly line, and said, we got a problem. Look at the widgets we're turning out. But apparently there are more than 230 private schools across the state. The average tuition for private schools, are you ready for this? $5,951 for elementary. High schools, the average, $6,611. More than 230 schools. There are Mississippi Dyslexia Therapy scholarships. There are a lot of other schools here, private schools, Magnolia Heights School and Senatobia, a list of all the other options across the state. I didn't realize that, but the average for private schools in the state of Mississippi is almost $4,000 cheaper. How can that possibly be?
Well, you speak to the inefficiency. And you know what? If given a choice, families will find the best fit for their kids. And what that has done, though, Paul, you think that those are pretty compelling numbers. What that does is what it has done is create educational inequality in Mississippi. So the fastest way to solve that problem is to go to school choice and make it possible for low-income families with limited financial means to be able to have a choice. And they will pick it. Yeah. They will pick a choice, and innovative options will emerge, and Mississippi's educational situation will improve. And it's the fastest ticket for Mississippi's prosperity that most people know of.
It just feels like we've been beat up on. If we were born in the state of Mississippi, we've been here all of our lives. We love this state. We want to see it take to the next level, and we think we're getting there. but we are defined by our poverty. And no matter what we do, no matter how much we achieve, no matter how many blue ribbons or trophies we have, we are defined by our poverty. 140 years of Democrat rule, 140 years trying to make a transition from the agrarian society to the industrial society, and we've got that poverty. It sticks here. It's generational. And no matter what we do, the world, from the New York Times to the Boston Globe to CNN, always wants to talk about the poverty in Mississippi. Whether
they
it's
do, Paul.
all the things happening on the coast, it doesn't matter.
Listen,
it's going to be the Delta.
We have to resolve. Look, we're only going to, a rising tide will rise all boats. Mississippi is always going to be as strong as its weakest county, and the reality is that with creating broadband access and giving people access to the internet that before didn't have it, by doing the literacy approach, making sure kids can read to a certain grade level before fourth grade, and then creating school choice where innovative solutions emerge. This is a way to solve that problem. I can't think of a faster way to address this than that. By the way, one point you mentioned about charter schools. As publisher of the Times-Picayune in New Orleans, I had an opportunity to really observe significantly the charter school implementation in New Orleans. And the biggest problem is that some schools were so darn successful that there was a waiting list. Public charter schools in New Orleans have been so successful. So kids find, and when you have a choice, you're going to go to the ones that's the most successful. That's going to happen no matter how poor a county is. That's for sure.
Back to that question before the break. Have you ever experienced personally any of that pressure or pushback?
Oh, for sure, man. I mean, listen, the education lobby in Mississippi is strong. And, superintendents are based on a certain criteria. And, now standardized scores are driving a lot of what they're doing. You would think you would get more leadership from them, but they fear that this will create a mass exodus from public schools. But from what I have read, and I'm certainly not an expert, but I've been paying attention to it, there has been no mass exodus from public schools in states that have done this.
No.
But they fear the unknown, and I don't think we have leadership at the state level on the educational side that can help us get our arms around this. So we end up with this tug of war with them. And yes, I have more than once dealt with that lobby, and it can come on to you pretty strong.
Oh man, can it not? I've had a lot of experience with that. Two things here. Corey DeAngelis mentioned this in every stat. Every analysis, every analytical way you look at it, actually the public, and it's hard for people to understand this, in areas where the competition is, the public schools have gotten better. And it's hard to get people to convince that this is it. But your final thoughts, sir?
Hey, just one other thing. What I know about this, you should know, is from reading SuperTalk's news coverage on this. SuperTalk, if people don't have the newsletter or haven't signed up for the SuperTalk app, supertalk.fm, you should go there, sign up for the newsletter. But our news effort is extraordinary. Paul, is really, really good. And the way they're the shows feed into that news coverage. And since you guys have done such a great job of covering this specific issue and Empower Mississippi's efforts, that's how I'm informed about this. So I think that's really important to note.
It was good to have DeKeither on, too. So he's an incredible young man. He really is. And look forward to having him back on. They don't think we can fill 3 hours of talking, just you and I. We'll pick a subject and talk for 3 hours. Come on, man. You can invite us to your if you got no guests, invite us to your nearest gathering. We'll talk for 3 hours. You pay us, we'll leave. It's that simple. Thank you, Ricky. Appreciate it, sir. Always good to have you.
It's been a pleasure, man. Have a great weekend.
Take care.